I wish to manifest that the refusal of Her Excellency Vice President Sara Duterte to take her oath in today's hearing in the conduct of inquiry in aid of legislation is an affirmation of her stand, her position during the budget briefing of the OVP. And this representation wishes to manifest that when the resource speaker does not take her oath, then it follows that whatever statement she will provide, we call it, it could not hold any water. That being not under oath, the same cannot be used as an evidence in any inquiry, in any proceeding, Mr. Chair. In other words, her refusal to answer in the last budget briefing of the OVP is tantamount to her stand in today's inquiry of refusing to take her oath. That is for manifestation, Mr. Chair. And with that, Mr. Chair, I wish to remind the committee, our esteemed colleagues, and the Filipino people of the constitutional mandate that public office is a public trust. When there is a question, we're bound to answer. We're bound to explain. As a matter of fact, no less than the Philippine Constitution provides, we are accountable to the Filipino people at all times. We are now confronted by the issue on confidential fund. And I wish to emphasize, ang confidential fund po ay pera ng taong bayan. And we owe it to the people to explain kung paano ito ginastos, saan ito napunta, and to be specific, sinunod po ba natin ang joint circular regulating the use of confidential fund. Mr. Chair, I wish to raise as well, to invoke as well, and remind our esteemed colleagues that pursuant to the separation of power, we, the Congress, is exercising the power to legislate. Under this power, we also have the power of the purse. We can amend, we can revise, we can approve, and we can disapprove the budget that was proposed to us by the executive. And I wish to remind as well that the best instrument which shows the power of the purse of the people is no less than the General Appropriations Bill, which is an embodiment of the allocation for the entire Philippine government, which is the result of the legislative process of the Congress. In other words, ang budget po ng ating bansa ay napapaloob din sa isang batas, saklaw ng kapangyarihan ng Kongreso, and that is the power to legislate. To be able to make sure that the power of the purse is properly exercised, we are granted as well by the oversight power. And that is to make sure that all our legislations, that includes the budget of the national government, the General Appropriations Act, are well complied with by our fellow public servants. And to make sure, and as a consequence of this oversight power, we have this inquiry in aid of legislation. So I just wish to remind the Filipino people, and that includes the OVP, ito po ay trabaho ng Kongreso. Busisiin ang budget. And not only that, to exercise the oversight power to make sure na yun pong ating mga nakaraang legislation, that includes the General Appropriations Act, ay nagamit ng tama ng mga ahensya ng gobyerno. I hope that the OVP will be enlightened to address the issues instead of attacking this institution, of politicizing and matters concerning politics, Mr. Chair. Third, Mr. Chair, we should be uniform in the application of our rules. If we are guided by the constitutional mandate that public office is a public trust, if we observe malfeasance, misfeasance, and nonfeasance in the LGUs, as a matter of fact, we have pending inquiry in aid of legislation concerning LGUs. Kung iniimbestigahan po natin ang Office of the Mayor, kung iniimbigastahan po natin ang Office of the Governor, by equality under the law, we should conduct an investigation as well to the Office of the Vice President. And I wish to thank the Honorable Valeriano for taking a stand before the plenary to initiate this inquiry in aid of legislation to address the observation not only of this representation, but of our fellow members of the Committee on Appropriations about the irregularities which we have seen already in the disbursement of fund, as a matter of fact, not only of the confidential fund, but even the regular allocation of the OVP. With that, Mr. Chair, may I proceed to my question for the COA? Kanina
Yes.
po,
But after your lengthy manifestation, you have already
Mr. Chair.
consumed 4
just
minutes.
one question,
Mr.
Mr. Chair.
Mr.
Just
Chair,
one question.
Yes, the Honorable Marcoleta.
May I offer a counter manifestation, Mr. Chair?
Later po, 1 minute na lang po siya and then
Kasi
I will
baka makalimutan yung continuity, yung flow ng discussion. I'd like to ask only, Mr. Chair, by way of manifestation, is there anybody who is questioning the power of the purse of Congress? Is there anybody who is questioning the legislative function and oversight function of Congress? Is there? Because if there is none, then we are not supposed to overextend the discussion or any manifestation because nobody is questioning that. And I think nobody could question that. Even the privileged speech of the Honorable Valeriano. I think the proper question there, the proper title is not asserting the power of the purse. We should not assert it because that power is inherent in us. Asserting or not asserting that power is of no moment. Yun po ay birthright. Yun po is inherent right of Congress. And let me make of record, the office of the Vice President, to my mind, did not undermine the power of the purse. When she personally came in the first hearing and presented herself, including the budget by way of a PowerPoint presentation, she made a presentation, Mr. Chair. And after that, she made a categorical statement that she said, I forgo, Madam Chair, I forgo my opportunity to defend the budget of the Office of the President by way of question and answer, and instead I leave it to the discretion of the House of Representatives on their decision to decide on the proposal as presented. This is a very respectful answer, Mr. Chair. I did not find any offensive remark in that particular statement. She gave the entire House of Representatives the entire discretion, the entire right to decide on the proposal she presented before us. Why would we blame her for saying that she disrespected Congress? No, sir. I think it was triggered by the fact that questions were asked in relation to the confidential and intelligence funds. To my mind, Mr. Chair, these particular funds were subjected to a notice of disallowance. But the notice of disallowance by its nature, by its very nature, Mr. Chair, is contestable. It is appealable. It is yet to be explained. And initially, as explained by the representative of COA, the notice of disallowance suffered by way of supporting documents, by way of non-compliance with certain requisites, what if the Vice President is able to provide all the supporting documents? What if finally she is able to come up with the requisites required in order for you to consider that all these funds are eventually allowable and they are not disallowed? And chances are she may be able to do that. Hindi po final judgment ang notice of disallowance. As a matter of fact, based on COA's own representation the other day, the Vice President received the notice of disallowance only on August 24, 2024, which means, Mr. Chair, the Vice President has 6 months within which to reply and make an answer. That is correct, Madam COA. So, 6 months is up to February 2025. We should give her all the allowance. We should give her the time. Because 6 months is 6 months. So why are we rushing to make a judgment? As a matter of fact, as I have already initiated earlier, Mr. Chair, when you said that anything we can discuss in this committee provided it is of public interest, and you said that intelligence funds and confidential funds are public interest, but I said, because of our own rules, we should make a prior and preliminary determination that is directly and principally connected to malfeasance, misfeasance, or non-feasance. We have not made that determination. How can we now begin questioning whether or not the intelligence funds covered by an initial notice of disallowance is already directly and principally connected with non-feasance, or misfeasance, or malfeasance? Madam COA, how many agencies of government today are subjected to notice of disallowance? Do you have a number? How many agencies today?
With all due respect to the
Before
Honorable
But that is a question I will leave, and I will
Yes.
terminate
But-
my manifestation, Madam.
Yes, but I will.
I
I
believe,
would like
Mr.
to
Chair, that
respond.
this is still my time.
Yes, but I would like to respond to your manifestation, Congressman Marcoleta.
Parliamentary
Let
inquiry,
me.
Mr. Chair. Parliamentary inquiry
What is the
muna.
parliamentary inquiry of
I
the
would
Honorable
like to
Abante?
ask the Honorable Marcoleta, is he rebuking this committee?
What is the question, Mr. Chair?
Are you rebuking this committee?
Why am I supposed to rebuke the committee? I am
You
not.
have been saying things for a while.
What?
You have been rebuking this committee.
You are saying that.
We're not blaming the Vice President on this.
I asked
Honorable
the
Marcoleta,
question.
we
I asked
are
the
not
question. You do not have
blaming
the
the-
right to
One
demand
minute,
that.
one minute suspension is declared by the chair.
Move to suspend.
Before I recognize the Honorable Congressman Luistro, let me first respond to the manifestation of the Honorable Marcoleta. Let me cite Section 4, Rule 4, Section 1, last paragraph, which provides that the filing or pendency of a case before any court, tribunal, quasi-judicial, or administrative body shall not stop or abate any inquiry conducted to carry out a legislative purpose. What we are doing right now is we are doing our mandate. This hearing is in aid of legislation. So, wala pa naman po tayong inaakusahan dito. The fact that the issue is still with COA and is still pending appeal, it does not stop this committee from conducting an inquiry in aid of legislation to conduct or to carry out our legislative purpose. So, yun lamang po. Ma'am, you still have 1 more minute.
Mr. Chair, in response to the Honorable Marcoleta, this representation did not say that the OVP is questioning the power of the Congress. However, Mr. Chair, I wish to state for the record, how else will you interpret her refusal to answer? How else will you interpret her refusal to take an oath? I think, Mr. Chair, The only reasonable interpretation on her gestures is that she refused to participate in the investigation or inquiry in aid of legislation that we are conducting. Secondly, Mr. Chair, about the notice of disallowance, we take cognizance of the fact that this is not yet final and executory. As a matter of fact, the COA commented that the OVP has a period of 180 days, equivalent to 6 months, to solicit to make an appeal for the purpose of seeking for a possible reversal of the ND. However, Mr. Chair, kapag ba may ND, bawal na bang malaman ito ng publiko? Kapag ba may ND, bawal na bang imbestigahan ito? And it is on this light that I invoke that public office is a public trust, and at all times, we are accountable to the Filipino people. In response to his comment about the possibility of the ND being reversed, I think I made a manifestation already in the last budget briefing of the DepEd. If in the event that the ND is reversed, in spite of having this inquiry already, the COA is not precluded. The COA is not prevented from sharing to the Filipino people that the OVP was able to justify, and therefore we are reversing the ND. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, I wish to emphasize that there is no law which prevents the Congress, which prevents the COA from discussing, deliberating on the subject matter of the notice of disallowance. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I still have a question?
I will give you 1 minute.
Para lang po sa understanding ng mga Pilipino, pwede po bang pakidistinguish in layman's term confidential fund from regular fund in 2 aspects? One is procurement, second is liquidation. Because we've been discussing about CF, confidential fund. The question is, naiintindihan ho ba tayo ng mga Pilipinong mamamayan? Now, I think it's high time for us to explain, COA, ano po ba ang diferensya o pagkakaiba, confidential from regular, with respect to one is procurement and second is liquidation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
COA, any representative from COA? Yes, Attorney Camora.
As to the confidential fund, it refers to a lump sum amount provided to NGAs, LGUs, and COBs for their confidential expenses, which expenses pertain to or are related to surveillance activities in civilian government agencies that are intended to support the mandate or operations of the agency. The audit of the confidential fund is based on the...
Can we explain on the process of procurement or disbursement? You said it is a lump sum fund. May procurement process po ba kapag confidential fund?
Since it involves confidential activities,
There is none.
There is no procedures on procurement.
No compliance to procurement law is necessary for confidential fund.
Yes,
There
Madam
is no
Chair.
posting,
Mr.
there is
Chair.
no bidding. Tama po ba?
Tama po, Mr. Chair.
And with respect to the regular fund, we have to comply. In other words, the law on procurement and bidding has to be followed. Tama po?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Yes po, tama po.
Yes. Now let's go to liquidation. Ano pong diferensya ng confidential fund with the regular fund in terms of liquidation?
Mr. Chair, yung sa liquidation ng confidential fund is provided for under the joint circular. So, hindi po necessary na sinusunod namin yung sa regular fund.
Summary and in layman's term, ma'am, how do you make it more understandable for the Filipino people? Pagdating ng liquidation, distinguish natin CF from regular fund.
Mr. Chair, sa liquidation po ng CF, kung ano po ang required ng joint circular na documents to be submitted, yun po yung kailangan nilang isubmit. Otherwise, deficient yung liquidation nila.
Which is less compared to the regular fund.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Way
Mr.
less
Chair.
than the requirements for the liquidation of regular fund.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
In short, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, ano po ba yung mga requirements sa regular fund for purposes of liquidation na hindi nyo hinihingi sa confidential fund? In brief lang po.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I am only aware of the requirements ng sa confidential. So, may I ask the help of ano?
Mr. Chair, may just manifest my request that I hope to hear a very clear explanation from the
Maybe we
COA
can,
on our next hearing.
Maybe we can address that question to the state auditor,
Yes, Mr.
Attorney
Chair.
Tomawis. Would you like to respond to the query of the Honorable Luistro?
Mr. Chair, for the information, for the regular fund, for the liquidation of regular fund, it is subject to the COA circular wherein there is a documentary requirements required to be submitted. Then for the confidential fund, I have no exact information because it is based on the another joint circular. So there are two circulars to be required to be complied with. The COA circular, which is the documentary requirements for regular audit or for the regular transactions, and for the confidential fund, there is that joint circular that must be complied with.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect to the COA, this representation is not satisfied with the answer. So may I request for a better and clearer explanation on how we distinguish CF from regular fund in terms of procurement, that is one, and in terms of liquidation, that is two. We will be looking forward, Mr. Chair, to listening to the discussion and explanation of the COA on our next hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The Honorable Marcoleta is now recognized for his interpellation.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, sasamantalahin ko na po ang presence po ng mga kinatawan ng Commission on Audit. Gusto ko po sanang itanong mula sa kanila, ano-ano pong mga opisina ng ating pamahalaan o ahensya ang pinagkakalooban po ng intelligence and confidential funds?
Attorney Camora, please respond.
Confidential funds are given to NGAs, to LGUs, and some GOCCs po.
You can elaborate, Madam Representative, sino po sa mga LGUs ang binibigyan po ng intelligence and confidential funds?
Sa LGUs po, depende po sa LGU, sa POP po nila, Mr. Chair.
Hindi po ba yung mga opisina ng mayor ay nakakatanggap ng intelligence and confidential funds?
As long as it is part of their budget, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair.
Kaya nga po tinatanong ko sa inyo, kayo po nakakaalam kasi kung sino-sino sa kanila. Karaniwan po yung opisina ng mayor, nakatatanggap po, maaaring hindi lahat, ngunit nakatatanggap po basically yung opisina ng mayor. Tama po?
According to the joint circular po, LGUs whose peace and order is a priority concern, sila po usually yung nag-allocate ng confidential funds.
Kaya nga po, base po sa record ninyo, may mga mayors po, opisina ng mayor, ang nakatatanggap ng confidential and intelligence funds. Kasi po kayo ang nag-o-audit eh.
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
Para hindi na tayo magtagal, ganun lang kasi. Pati po, opisina ng gobernador, nakakatanggap din po ng ganung klaseng pondo, hindi po ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yun pong PNP, nakakatanggap po.
Intelligence fund po sa
Opo,
PNP.
yung AFP, nakakatanggap po.
Yes po, Mr.
Ang
Chair.
opisina po ng ating Pangulo ay nakakatanggap po ng intelligence funds.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Ngayon po, sa mga karamihan po ng opisina ng mayor at opisina ng gobernador at alimpang mga LGUs, na maaaring makatanggap nito, depende sa kanilang pangangailangan. Yung AFP at saka yung ating kapulisan at ang ating ang opisina po ng ating Panguluhan, masasabi po ba ninyo na merong na-issuean po ng notice or notices of disallowance sa napakaraming opisina na tumatanggap ng ganitong pondo?
Mr. Chair, pagka meron naman pong mga ibang agencies na katanggap
Kaya nga po
ng
gusto ko pong malaman, halimbawa 2022 at saka 2023, ballpark figures lang po, ilan po sa mga official at sa mga opisina ng mayor na nakatanggap ng confidential or intelligence funds ang subjected to notices of disallowance? Ilan po sa opisina ng gobernador, ganun din po yung tanong. At saka sa iba't ibang mga opisina po, para malaman lang natin, kahit ballpark figures lang, ilan po yung na-issue nyo na notices of disallowance concerning these types of funds?
Mr. Chair, wala po kaming data on the said information today because we only have data on the OVP po. I cannot give an exact number po
Bakit
today.
po? Kasasabi nyo lang na meron din kayong sinubject sa notice of disallowance eh. Bakit po yung opisina lang ng OVP ang meron kayong record?
Yung hawak po namin ngayon, Mr. Chair, since ito po yung subject ng inquiry, we are prepared as to the OVP. Pero as to other
O
agencies...
sige po, ganito na lang. Meron po ba kayong estimated na bilang ng na-issue nyo na kayo po kasi pag intelligence and confidential funds, kayo po yung auditing unit ang nakatoka para tingnan po ang pagkakagasta ng tipo ng fondong ito. Tama po?
Tama po, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Makapagsasabi po ba kayo ng estimated number? Ito po, kinabibilangan ng opisina ng mayor, ng gobernador, ng ISAP, ng kung ano-ano, ng siguro po, maski National Intelligence Security Council, AFP, ang kapulisan. Can you provide us a ballpark number of the notices of disallowance that your office has initially issued?
Mr. Chair, I cannot give you a ballpark figure now since hindi naman po ako involved sa entire ICFAO. So,
wala po bang isa sa inyo na nakaupo ngayon sa aming harapan ang makapagbibigay man lang ng estimated number? Napakarami po ng mayor, napakarami po ng gobernador.
precisely, sir, kaya sa ibang division, wala po akong...
Pwede ba natin sabihin 100 or 500 notices of disallowance?
I cannot say po, Mr. Chair.
How can you help us? We are supposed to be doing this in aid of legislation. Kaya namin kayo pinatawag para tulungan nyo kami.
Mr. Chair,
Ang sabi po ng jurisprudence, which was quoted by no less than the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Reynato Puno, quoting various jurisprudence. Kasama na po yung Arnold versus Nazareno. There should be a legislative purpose. That's number one requirement. The number two requirement, there should be pertinency in relation to those legislative purpose. Kaya po
Congressman Marcoleta,
tinatanong
you
ko,
have 1 minute.
tinatanong ko po ngayon, gaano karami, o sige ganito na lang, marami ba ang na-issue nyo po na notices of disallowance in connection with these types of fund?
Sir, I really cannot give an exact number
Hindi nga sabihin mo
today.
lang, marami.
Attorney,
Medyo marami.
Attorney Camora, could you please submit the documents that the Honorable Marcoleta is requesting?
Yes.
Kasi sa ngayon,
Mr.
bago ako
As to the
magtapos,
numbers.
Mr. Chair, I want
Yes,
to wind
Mr.
up now.
Yes.
I want
please
to wind up now. Can you at least sabihin mo lang, marami, medyo marami. Pati ba naman yun, hindi mo... Ang dami po nating mayor dito sa buong Pilipinas, ang daming gobernador, pati kapulisan, ISAP, AFP. So sabi mo kanina, marami na-cover ng Ilan ba?
Madam Chair, kung yung current year, I can answer na
O yung,
konti lang
on
po.
the average noon, yung halimbawa 2020, 2021, 2022, by way of your experience, by way of your former data.
Previous years po, I cannot say since bago lang po ako sa ICPAO. So, we could just provide you po with the documents.
Please wrap up. One last question, Congressman
What
Marcoleta.
about to the other members of the Commission on Audit? Through your experience, let's say in the last 10 years, wala kayong may bibigay? Alam po ninyo kung bakit ko tinatanong ito? Kung marami po kayong na-issue, at alam ko marami talaga, na notices of disallowance, pupuntahin natin dito lahat, hindi lang ang Office of the Vice President at dapat umupo dito. Lahat na po ng inisyuhan nyo ng notices of disallowance must sit here para makagawa po kami ng mas maganda, mas balanse na batas. Kung pag-uusapan po ay ang paggamit nitong intelligence funds. Do you understand, Madam?
Yes, I understand po the question.
So,
However,
the committee is expecting to receive the number as well as the pertinent records pertaining to the issuance of notices of disallowance to the municipal mayors, governors, the PNP, the AFP, and such other agencies who are recipients of intelligence and confidential funds, because later on we will also summon them and sit with us. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair.
Congressman Marcoleta, you cannot move because you are not a member of this committee.
It's good that you have raised that, Mr. Chair. I am a vice chair of this committee. On September 4, I was surprised because I saw the journal that I was replaced by my comare. The question is, if I am replaced as a vice chair, does that automatically mean that I am removed as a member of this committee? Before you answer that, Mr. Chair, I think I need some legal basis before you answer that.
Yes, your removal from the vice chair, you were removed in a plenary session, House Rules. Now, under Section 28 of the House Rules, it provides that the House shall, upon the recommendation of the Committee on Rules, organize committees, their membership, and jurisdiction. Therefore, your removal as vice chair and member of the House was a plenary action, and therefore, it should be the plenary who should include you as member or as vice chair. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, it was very clear that I was removed as vice chair. I was not removed as a member.
Because you were
There is this distinction between being a member and vice chair. If I
Yes,
was
but-
removed as vice chair,
but your appointment as vice chair, you were not appointed as member. Your appointment was as vice chair. So hindi naman po kayo
Mr.
in-appoint
Chair.
muna as member bago kayo ginawang vice chair. Your immediate appointment was as vice chairman, and therefore your removal as vice chair will remove you as member also. Yun po yun.
Well,
And it's a
that is
plenary
your-
action. The committee has nothing to do with it.
that is your opinion, Mr. Chair, but I am expecting that some kind of a basis should be presented that upon removal of a vice chair, that automatically also removes him as a member of that committee. That's all I am asking, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
We have already answered the manifestation or the inquiry of the Honorable Marcoleta. Next to interpolate is
Mr. Chairman,
Honorable.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, with the permission, with the indulgence of Honorable Dionisio, I would like to recognize the Honorable Paduano.
Mr. Chairman, under our rules, there's a motion for a point of order. And this is one of the highest motion that should be ruled by the chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, just a parliamentary procedure, the chairman should recognize the person that moves for a point of order, because that is one of the highest motion that should be recognized by the chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Noted. Noted. Honorable
Mr. Chair,
Honorable Vice Chairman Abante.
with the indulgence of Congressman Junicio, may I be recognized?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Within
yeah,
that,
just a point of inquiry. There's a motion for a point of order, and I have stated that is the one of the highest, well, in fact, second highest motion. So the chairman should rule on that point of order that was raised by, I think it's Congressman Valeriano.
My point of order is that the chairman already ruled na he was removed as vice chairman of the Committee on Good Government and Public Accountabilities. That's
it
all,
was
Mr.
already
Chairman.
answered. It was already ruled, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you po.
Mr. Chairman.
The Honorable Vice Chair Acop.
May I just ask some clarification, which is connected with the questions of the Honorable Luistro?
With the indulgence of the Honorable Junicio, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I know from COA or from DBM, doon po sa mga GA natin, magkahiwalay po yung provision ng intelligence at sa confidential funds. Di po ba? Would you agree with that?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes. So, bakit po magkaiba? Bakit may separate provision yung intelligence fund, may separate provision yung confidential fund?
Attorney Camora, please respond.
Mr. Chair, saga din po yung difference actually po, which is ang intelligence fund po ay refers to those intelligence information gathering of uniformed and military personnel, and it has something to do with national security, while sa confidential expenses is for the civilian government po.
Specifically for what?
That are intended to support the mandate or operations of the agency.
Now, may I know if they are also required to submit reports of the utilization of these funds?
Intel funds po, Mr.
Both
Chair.
funds.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
To whom should they submit reports regarding their utilization?
Mr. Chair, as to the confidential funds, they need to submit for NGAs to the President of the Philippines, the Senate President, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and to other agencies to the Department Secretary. As to the Intel Fund, they submit their accomplishment report to the President of the Philippines.
Now, may I know what agency would look after the reporting of such? Sino po ang tumitingin kung ito'y nako-comply? Because I think this is part of the GAA, and the GAA is a law.
Mr. Chair, it is part of the required documents that they have to submit.
Sino po ang tumitingin na dapat nako-comply ang mga ito? Which agency of government? Kasi lahat po ng GAA may provision tungkol sa intelligence fund at saka confidential fund. It is always part of the GAA regarding provisions for the utilization of such. Di po ba? Oh, so sinabi nyo, it is required that they should submit reports. But who looks after the compliance of these agencies concerned?
Is it not the audit of the COA po?
It is also not the jurisdiction of DBM?
Mr. Chair, I think if it's on the utilization of funds, it's more on the COA.
Kaya nga po, it refers to intelligence and confidential funds. May reportorial requirements po ito. Now, who looks after the compliance of such?
Mr. Chair, kung yung sa liquidation po, sa COA po siya nagpupunta, yung reports po. And then, yung sa reporting agencies, it's the accomplishment report po of
Kayo
the
po ang
Intel and
nagsabi
Confidential
kanina
Fund.
na yung confidential fund, the reports must be made to the President of the Republic of the Philippines, doon po sa Senate President representing the Senate, at saka yung Speaker of the House representing the House. So, how do you determine whether this is complied with?
Part of the required documents is a proof of submission to the above agencies.
So, kayo,
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
yeah, kayo pala ang may jurisdiction nito na nagsasubmit sila ng mga reports in compliance with the provision of the GAA.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Kaya po, it's one of the required documents, yung proof po of submission.
No, nagpakalayo-layo pa tayo, madam. Kayo pala eh. I would just like to follow up the issue raised by the Honorable Paduano. You cannot answer kung ano po ang timeline para sa regular audit at saka fraud audit. Tama po. Hindi po nyo nasasagot.
May I clarify po? Since
Mr.
Mr. Chair?
Fahad Tumawis, you are
Yes.
recognized.
Since I am the audit team leader of the OBP for conducting the regular audit, meron po tayong timeline for the regular audit. Kasi usually, meron kaming timeline to transmit the report annually to the Congress, to the OP, and to the oversight bodies, as well as to the management or to the OBP. So meron pong timeline na nasa GAA po, nasa General Appropriation
Ano
Act
po yung timeline na yun?
for the regular audit.
Yes. Ano
But-
po? Ilan buwan? Ilan taon?
Hindi kasi natin alam. Kasi hindi tayo special audit.
September yung nandito.
Huwag nyo po kasi sabihin sa amin na may timeline kung hindi nyo alam kung ilan ang buwan, araw o taon yung pag-conduct ninyo. Because the next question that I will ask is, if you conduct a fraud audit, how long will it take? Would it be more than the number of months, years sa pag-conduct ninyo ng regular audit? Kasi mga taga-COA, yun po yung problema ni Chairman Carraps, who is the chairman of the Committee on Public Accounts. Yung hearing po namin doon, naririnig namin yung regular audit at saka fraud audit. Ang napapansin namin, napakatagal po. As if there's no difference between the timeline of the regular audit and the fraud audit. Kaya ang susunod na tanong ko rin sa inyo is, what is the purpose of a fraud audit? Anong objective? Kaya siguro sa next hearing, para hindi naman ma-delay yung proceedings na ito, banggit na rin sa susunod na hearing. Ano po?
Noted po, Mr. Chair.
Yes, kasi yun po ang problema namin sa mga hearings namin dito. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Please continue. Yes, kayo na po. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have more or less 30 questions and 2 manifestations. I hope the honorable congressman next to me would not gripe and get mad at me. Mr. Chair, may I proceed?
Yes, but you have to squeeze your 30 questions and 2 manifestation into 5 minutes. Please proceed.
If
Mr.
that
Chair,
is the case, Mr.
I'm giving him all the time in the world.
Okay. Sige po. Please proceed, Congressman Akop.
Thank you, Vice Chair Abante. May I ask COA, ang una po ninyong ini-issue sa isang agency na nagkakaroon po ng problema tungkol sa kanilang use of public funds would be your AOM or Audit Observation Memorandum. Tama po ba?
Tama po, Mr. Chair.
And the next would be a notice of suspension. Tama rin po ba?
Sa regular audit, pwedeng notice of suspension or pwedeng notice of charge.
Audit of?
Notice of suspension or notice of charge.
Notice of charge?
Charge po.
Yes, okay. And after that, there will be a notice of disallowance.
Tama po, Mr. Chair.
Tama. Now, would there be a timeline pursuant to your circulars na meron po yung interval ng pagbigay ng AOM, after which your notice of suspension or notice of charge, and then notice of disallowance?
Mr. Chair, sa regular audit and even sa confidential funds audit, 15 days after issuance of AOM, the agency must give their reply.
Yes, but they can ask for a motion, they can file a motion for reconsideration to extend the period. Nangyayari po yata yun.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, yun nga po may gusto lang akong i-point out. So, it's very possible na nagfa-file sila ng motion for extension of time to file their answer.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Tama?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Now, that is also true after the issuance of a notice of suspension.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Nagfa-file pwede rin sila mag-file ng extension of time before you give the notice of disallowance?
Mr. Chair, may I clarify those?
Please, Mr. Tomawis.
For the regular audit, first thing po na ginagawa namin pag may nakita kaming mga deficiencies, mag-issue kami ng AOM, and the management is given 15 days to reply for comments para ma-justify nila kung may mga justification sila. And then just in case po na dun sa deficiencies noted po namin is may mga non-submission of documents or may mga lacking documents, we can issue notice of suspension.
I know that. But ang tanong ko po is, they can file a motion to extend the time for them to submit. Nangyayari po yun, di po ba?
I think I have no authority or position na magsabi doon because the notice pag po inappeal na or for example may extension, but then on my perspective po as auditor ng OBP, we are required po dun sa we are required na dapat ma-comply po ng management. Pag nag-issue kami ng notice, dapat ma-comply nila within the 90 days period.
Assuming that they will not be able to comply, what is your next move?
That's the time po na pwede na kami mag-issue ng notice of disallowance kasi nag-mature na po yung notice of suspension.
So, 15 days, sige. To follow you. After which, the notice of suspension, hindi pa rin siya. Ano ang susunod? Notice of disallowance. How long would that take?
For the notice of disallowance po, for example, dun sa notice of suspension, pag na-issue na po yun, the management or the agency is given 90 days to comply with the requirements. Then if ever po na hindi nila ma-comply with that period, magmamature na po siya into notice of disallowance. Then,
so, 3.5 months. 90 days, that's 3 months plus 15 days, 3.5 months.
For the notice of suspension po, may requirement po na 90 days.
Kaya nga, plus yung 15 days na kanyo ng kwan, from AOM,
yes,
so that's
AOM.
3.5 months. Now, doon po sa question ng 125 million na confidential fund, in-issue nyo po yung liquidated report po nyo January 10, 2023. Di po ba? Would that be correct? And you issued the notice of suspension only in December 13, 2023. Would that be correct?
Mr. Chair, the first AOM was issued on September
Hindi, tinatanong ko kung if that is correct, yung sinabi ko po. Kindly answer yes or no. Is my data wrong?
Mr. Chair, may I request?
Ang sabi ko, dito po sa report nyo na notice of disallowance, yung liquidation report ninyo is dated January 10, 2023. Tama po.
Tama po,
Tama.
Mr.
Yung nga
Chair.
po ang tinatanong ko. And the notice of suspension was dated December 13, 2023. Now, January 10, 2023 to December 13, 2023, almost 1 year na. Akala ko ba ay 15 days lang dapat?
Mr. Chair,
Kailan nyo in-issue yung AOM nito?
yung AOM po was issued September 14.
September 14. Di na-extend talaga. Eh, ang sabi kanina ni Mr. Tumawis, 15 days lang. Pero dito, sa kaso na ito, kung September 13 yung AOM ninyo, dapat October pa lang, nag-i-issue na kayo ng notice of suspension. So tama yung sinasabi ko na na-extend yung time dahil yun ang experience namin sa sa hearings namin coming from your representatives.
Yung 15 days, Mr. Chair, is for them to answer. Of
Yes.
course, after they give their compliance po, we have to evaluate po their reply.
So how long would it take you? Kaya ko tinatanong yung timeline dahil ang problema, kung titingnan po ninyo yung mga katanungan kanina, yung tagal.
Mr.
po ba?
Chair, it would depend po kasi sa complexity nung sinubmit nila po sa amin.
Well, anyway, let's deal with your AOM na in-issue po ninyo nung fiscal year 2022, yung confidential funds ng OVP. Pwede po bang malaman, ano po ang nag-trigger na mag-issue kayo ng AOM regarding the confidential funds of the OVP in 2022?
Based on their submitted liquidation report, we found deficiencies in the documents that they gave us.
Doon sa documents na binigay po sa inyo,
Sa submitted liquidation report, Mr. Chair.
pwede po bang malaman namin kung ano po yung major findings na nandun po sa Audit Observation Memorandum?
Mr. Chair, yung major findings are the ones that can be seen na po sa notice of disallowance. Which is yung sa payment of rewards.
Ang tanong ko po, Madam Attorney, is that ano po yung major findings doon sa AOM, hindi po sa notice of disallowance? Kasi you must have a basis why you issued the AOM. And I want to know the basis of that.
Mr. Chair, dun sa AOM, first they did not submit documentary evidence of payment to support their accomplishment report. And then, per analysis of the submitted accomplishment report, it was revealed that some of the fund was used for medical and food aid and travel relative to confidential operations, although it was not yet clear if, at that point, if it was used for confidential operations. And then we have the payment of rewards, which were not supported with documents evidencing the success of the information gathering. And then they also did not submit the special budget request and the amended accomplishment report. And then the DV was not properly accomplished by the DV was not
Okay. Yes.
particularly accomplished.
Now, these observations of yours, were repeated sa notice of disallowance. Sinagot mo na yung kanina eh. Di ba?
Yes, Mr.
Yes.
Chair.
Now, ang susunod na katanungan ko po is, did the Office of the Vice President issue any response in relation to your AOM?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is why the remaining items in the NDs are those that we are not yet satisfied with.
Yes, the responses given by the Office of the OVP did not satisfy your requirement.
As to the ND, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Now, may in-issue din po kayong notice of suspension dahil hindi nga po acceptable yung sagot ng Office of the Vice President.
Yes, Mr.
Tama?
Chair. Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Ano po yun po yung dahilan bakit nag-issue kayo notice of suspension? Hindi nag-comply yung OVP sa mga requirements po ninyo.
Hindi nag-comply, Mr. Chair, or their compliance is still not sufficient.
Yes. Now, nung naibigay nyo yung notice of suspension po ninyo, pwede po bang malaman ano po yung findings na nilagay nyo ron at saka what steps did the Office of the Vice President take in view of the notice of suspension?
As to the notice of suspension, again, the rewards was not fully documented. Some of the accomplishment reports should not be included as confidential expenses,
Yes.
such as the tables, chairs. And then we noted also that some of the acknowledgement receipts were undated or not properly dated.
Okay.
And then they used different
Ma'am,
counting terms.
pwede po ba pakilakasan niyo yung boses ninyo tsaka Tagalogin na po ninyo? Para medyo mas maliwanag po.
Opo. Yung ibang nasubmit po na acknowledgement receipts, ibang accounting terms ang ginamit compared sa what is required in the joint circular.
So, Madam, sa pagkaintindi ko, kung maayos sanang sinagot ng Office ng Vice President yung mga requirements po ninyo, hindi na po dapat ma-issuean sila ng notice of disallowance. Would that be correct?
Tama po, Mr. Chair.
Now, pero nag-issue po kayo ng notice of disallowance.
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Pwede po bang ilahad ninyo sa amin ano yung major findings at observations niyo sa notice of disallowance? Yun po ba ang binanggit ninyo? Yun din po ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yung sa payment of rewards na kulang po ang documentation on the success of the information gathering, yun pong pag-charge nila ng tables, chairs, desktop computers sa confidential fund, which is not, wala po sa joint circular. And then yun pong resubmission nung updated na accomplishment report nila sa 3 offices po.
And to confirm, Madam Attorney, these findings and observations were already raised doon pa lang sa AOM. Tama
Yes
po?
po? Tama po, Mr. Chair.
And sa matagal na panahon na naibigay natin ang pagkakataon sa Office of the Vice President na may paliwanag at ma-rectify, kumbaga, yung inyong mga observations doon sa AOM, hindi pa rin nabago hanggang nag-issue po kayo ng notice of disallowance.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mayroon naman pong submissions, but kulang po.
In other words, hindi po ma-justify ng Office of the Vice President yung kanilang expenditure program, yung paggamit po nila ng pondo. In general, would that be correct?
That would be the correct po.
Mr. Chair, I just want to emphasize this point. Kasi a few weeks ago lang natin unang nabalitaan itong mga findings na nakalaan sa notice of disallowance. Pero sa naririnig ko ngayon from COA, last year pa nila pinupunto ang mga pagkukulang na ito ng Office of the Vice President. Sa aking pagtatanong po sa inyo, yun po ang lumalabas. Number 2, last year pa, paulit-ulit na binigyan ng COA ang Office of the Vice President ng pagkakataon na maayos o may paliwanag itong mga expenditure na ginawa po nila sa paggamit po ng kanilang pondo. Tama rin po. At number 3, after all that time and all those chances, hindi talaga maayos o may paliwanag ng OVP ang kanilang paggamit doon sa confidential fund worth 125 million. Would that be correct?
Bale, ang amount na lang po niya sa notice of disallowance is 73 something.
Yes. Yun ang hindi nila naipaliwanag hanggang ngayon.
Opo.
That is for the confidential fund for 2022. Now, could we go to the confidential fund for 2023 na worth 500 million? Tama rin po ba?
Tama po, Mr. Chair. Yung budget po nila.
Pwede po bang malaman, masabi ninyo dito sa committee na ito, kung nagkaroon din ba ng audit observation memorandum na inisyo ninyo ukol sa 2023 confidential funds? Meron din po bang AOM ito?
Meron din po, Mr. Chair.
Meron?
Meron po, Mr. Chair.
Ngayon, ilan pong AOM ang inailabas po ninyo in relation to this 2023 confidential fund?
Dalawang AOMs po, Mr. Chair.
Dalawang
yes, Mr.
AOM.
Chair.
Tama ba ang aking pagkaintindi na bawat quarterly disbursement ng OVP insofar as their confidential funds for 2023 are concerned ay may lumalabas na AOM galing sa inyo?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Although yung first and second period, pinagsama na po namin sa isang AOM.
Yes,
Kaya yung
but
third period
pinagsama po nyo yung dalawang period.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Now, would it be true na ang ibig sabihin lahat ng quarterly liquidation ng OVP may problema?
Yes, Mr.
Ganun po ang lumalabas sa sagot po ninyo.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes. In general terms, maaari nyo po bang ipresita sa committee ito yung major findings at observations sa bawat AOM na binigay po ninyo sa Office of the Vice President?
Mr. Chair, compared
Hindi,
po sa...
tinatanong ko lang naman kung maaari po nyong ibigay dito sa committee. Ang sagot lang po nyo, kung kaya po ninyo, kaya nyo po ba o hindi?
Before you answer, Attorney Camora, the Chair would like to manifest that the time of Congressman Acop is already up, but considering that Congressman Benny Abante already yielded to Congressman Acop, ibibigay po natin yung patutuloy po natin kay Congressman Acop yung time po ni Congressman Benny Abante. Please answer, Attorney Camora.
Mr. Chair, considering that the audit of the compliance of the AOMs is still ongoing,
You cannot submit.
I cannot yet.
Yun lang po ang gusto ko. Ang tanong ko naman po kung maaari nyo ibigay. Kung hindi pwede, you just give us the reason why.
Yes.
So, you cannot give it dahil ongoing pa yung inyong pan. Okay, thank you. Now, yung bang mga issues na nakikita nyo ngayon sa 2023, kagaya rin bang na mga issues noong 2022 vis-a-vis their confidential funds?
There are some similar findings, Mr. Chair.
Similar. So, ang ibig sabihin, ini-expect natin na mag-issue kayo ng notice of suspension at saka notice of disallowance. Would
Sir,
that be a
yeah.
correct statement?
I have yet to see the compliance report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. Mr. Chair, I would like to make a manifestation insofar as the refusal of the Vice President to take her oath insofar as the hearing of this committee is concerned. Such refusal can damage the public's perception of integrity in public office. The Filipino people deserve honesty and openness from their leaders, especially when their actions are being scrutinized. The House inquiry is in aid of legislation to serve the public interest. Dodging the oath gives the impression that the Vice President may not want the full truth to come out. No one is above the law or beyond the reach of truth. We humbly urge the Vice President to reconsider her position and take her oath, as this inquiry is meant to benefit the people we serve. Transparency should never be optional for public officials. We all owe it to the Filipino people to tell the truth under oath if it is necessary. Now, my second manifestation, Mr. Chair, would pertain to the issue of tradition as raised by the Honorable Marcoleta. And this is not my personal manifestation, but a manifestation of a group of Filipino citizens. And I would like to quote from their Viber. The Constitution of the Philippines, specifically Article 11, Section 1, explicitly states that public office is a public trust. At all times, public officers and employees must be accountable to the people, serve them with the utmost responsibility, integrity, loyalty, and efficiency. The primary responsibility of legislators is to the people and the nation, as this provision emphasizes. It is not to maintain outdated traditions that may obstruct necessary scrutiny and transparency in government operations. Although some may contend that these courtesies are extended to high-ranking officials, it is crucial to recognize that taxpayer funds are the source of funding for all public offices, including the office of the Vice President. Consequently, it is imperative that each centavo allotted to it undergoes the same rigorous assessment as any other department or office. Legislators are failing to fulfill their obligation to ensure that public funds are allocated responsibly and prudently by prematurely concluding budget discussions. The power of the purse is vested in Congress by Article 6, Section 24 of the Constitution. This authority requires the scrutiny of the national budget to ensure that it is in accordance with the requirements of the populace and that government programs and projects are appropriately funded and managed. Budget deliberations are not merely formalities. They are critical processes that enable legislators to evaluate and challenge the allocation of public funds. The constitutional mandate is directly violated by the use of tradition as an excuse to conclude these discussions. This is particularly true when the OVP's budget incorporates confidential funds, which necessitate even more rigorous scrutiny due to their nature. The people deserve transparency. It is time, I think, to discontinue a harmful practice. Not the deliberations themselves, but this long-honored tradition of circumventing critical budget evaluations should be terminated. Upholding such a practice, particularly when it directly affects the management of public funds, is a violation of the public interest mandate of legislators. We are at risk of fostering corruption and mismanagement by allowing tradition to supplant accountability. We have the right to demand that our representatives in Congress carry out their obligation to scrutinize the budget without exception as Filipinos. The OVP, or Office of the Vice President, like any other office that receives public funding, is subject to the same accountability standards. In order to guarantee that confidential funds are utilized for legitimate purposes that advance the public interest, they necessitate meticulous supervision. The first is a critical mechanism for preventing government overreach and the misappropriation of funds. Congress can guarantee that our government remains accountable to the people it serves by fulfilling this constitutional obligation. The public and our legislators are responsible for rejecting this detrimental tradition in favor of transparency and good governance. The integrity of our democratic processes and the restoration of trust in our institutions can only be achieved by doing so. Marami pong salamat, Mr. Chairman.
To the COA, now, the Office of the Vice President made an appeal. Okay? Now, ang question, timeline po tayo. Timeline. So, an appeal will be discussed dun sa director, then commission proper. How long will it take? Yung
COA.
appeal.
Sino
How
po
long
sa
will
inyo?
it take?
COA. Attorney Camora.
Mr. Chair, may I ask
The
a
appeal.
repetition? The appeal is...
How long will it take?
They are given 180 days po from...
Tama, 180 days.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So, within 6 months.
Yes, Mr.
And
Chair.
after that, after the 180 days, which is 6
Ang
months,
tanong po ni Congressman Paduano, after the appeal, gaano po ninyo katagal bago sagutin or maglabas po kayo ng recommendation?
Sandali po. Chairman,
Ay, please.
kasi any office, no, for that matter, and in this case, the Office of the Vice President is given 180 days or 6 months from the appeal. Now, so, bibigyan sila ng 6 months. And now, for example, the appeal supposedly started when the NDA, no, Notice of Disallowance started January. So, ang appeal niya, no, appeal niya will be pwedeng June 30. Tama? On that year. Tama? Last day, for example, of that 180 days. Tama?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Then again, after the appeal, iakyat sa commission proper.
Mr. Chair, the appeal is filed before the commission proper, Mr. Chair.
So, hindi na dadaan doon sa director. Diretso na po sa commission proper.
Hindi na po.
Okay, now, upon the receipt of the commission proper, how long will it take for the commission proper to decide?
Under our rules, Mr. Chair, 60 days po. But,
sorry, 60 days.
yes.
That's 2 months. Okay. But what, please?
But the commission proper may release its decision beyond the 60 days, considering the peculiarity of the case, and of course the appreciation of the submitted documents, Your Honor.
So you're telling the peculiarity of the case in the case of the Office of the Vice President is so peculiar? That is why that will go beyond 60 days? Are you saying that?
Your Honor, actually, what the rules prescribe is 60 days.
Yun ang rules,
Yes.
di ba? Now, Mr. Chairman, just a short manifestation. Ito ngayon, ang problema. Kasi we are conducting this inquiry in aid of legislation because we have to have a legislative action in this case. Again, part of my manifestation, Mr. Chair, we have to review. We have to review that 180 days because that is too long. Kasi, pwede kasi mangyari talaga na last day of that 180 days, sa kanila sagutin yung appeal. Diba? Magpadala ng appeal. Then after that, under the rules, is another 60 days. And it will take 8 months, Mr. Chairman. That's why, again, it was already discussed in the previous hearing in my committee. And I want to appeal to the COA to please have an amendment on such, because that is not a law. That is just a policy, an IRR of the COA. And, Mr. Chairman, allow me to discuss furthermore later. But as of now, Mr. Chairman, I would like to manifest that iyon po ang problema ng COA. Because 180 days and another 60 days, it's too long to give justice to the funds being appropriated by any agency. I'm not just pointing to the Office of the Vice President. It happens even in any agency, and even with regards to the case under my committee, in the case of Mamba, no, Governor Mamba, until now the COA has not yet submitted its final report. That's why, again, I'm appealing to the COA. Last year pa last year budget niyo pa. And hopefully, bukas nakasala kayo, di ba? Kaya lang may quadcom ako bukas. Kasi kung wala akong quadcom, sisingilin ko ulit kayo because this issue has been taking too long since last year pa, Mr. Chairman. And that's, as of now, Mr. Chairman, I end my manifestation and I will proceed later with the specifics with regards to the issue about the co-audit report of the Office of the Vice President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, first and foremost, I would like to manifest that if I cannot consume my 5 minutes in my manifestation and interpellation, my name will be listed in the second round, Mr. Chairman.
Noted po.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, Mr. Chairman, I would like to state on record my manifestation with regards to question of jurisdiction of this committee on the inquiry in aid of legislation with regards to the budget of the confidential fund of the Office of the Vice President. Number one, Mr. Chairman, this inquiry in aid of legislation in this committee is being conducted pursuant to a plenary action. This is a plenary action, and nobody can question about it because even the most highest official in the House of Representatives cannot question the plenary decision during plenary session. And it was approved during a plenary session which emanated from the privileged speech of the Honorable Rolando Valeriano on September 3, 2024. And it was referred to this committee even on that date. Now, Mr. Chairman, question of jurisdiction of this committee and question of the actions being made by the plenary and, of course, with the Committee on Rules, and then it goes back to the plenary for the plenary to decide whether this question or the subject matter that emanates from the privileged speech of the Honorable Valeriano is indeed will be referred to this committee. Now, again, Mr. Chairman, I would like to reiterate that, well, in fact, early this morning, we have already established, by the votes of, unanimous vote of all the members, it was established, and this committee was given the jurisdiction with regards to the confidential fund issue from the Office of the Vice President. Second, Mr. Chairman, question of the issue, the question about the issue about jurisprudence, which was cited earlier by the former President and the good representative from Pampanga, Mr. Chairman, question of the Standard Chartered Bank. And it was quoted by Madam GMA, and with due respect to the former President and Madam GMA, the Standard Chartered Bank jurisprudence, Mr. Chairman, is referred to question of sub judice. And in fact, in this particular case, in this particular investigation, no such case was filed against anybody from the Office of the Vice President in a regular court, Mr. Chairman. And again, Mr. Chairman, quoting about, it was also mentioned about the Arnold versus Nazareno case, and that case, Mr. Chairman, which was a Supreme Court decision dated on the year 1950, unless otherwise, Mr. Chairman, there's a new jurisprudence by the Supreme Court. But until now, it's being used, and that particular jurisprudence is being used, and the decision of the Supreme Court is favorable to Congress, and in particular to the Senate, questioning the contempt. The issue about the Arnold versus Nazareno is all about the powers of Congress for an inquiry in aid of a legislation, Mr. Chairman. That's why, with due respect again to the Honorable Madam President, I think the jurisprudence is cited, in particular with this representation, I think it cannot be invoked in the case of the office of the Vice President. Now, Mr. Chairman, and lastly, Mr. Chairman, well, in fact, when the Vice President opted not to take her oath in this honorable committee, and it was ruled by the chairman favorable to the position of the Vice President, Mr. Chairman, this committee, well, in fact, gives leniency and due courtesy to her because we allow the Vice President to deliver her opening remarks. And in fact, that is on record, Mr. Chairman, and supposedly, if this committee is not lenient and never give her the due courtesy to her office, we never allow her to deliver his sponsorship miracle. Because, well, in fact, we cannot even ask question to her, Mr. Chairman. Now, Mr. Chairman, let me proceed with regards to the COA, particularly to the COA.
Please continue.
Now, Mr. Chairman, let me address this to the COA. I have with me Joint Memorandum Circular 2015-01. And this is all about, I am correct that this is all about confidential funds. Tama po ba?
Attorney Camora.
Tama po, Mr. Chair.
Okay, GMC 2015-01. And I have also with me your Memorandum Circular in which this representation questioned that should be revised since last year. Memorandum Circular 97-002. Do you confirm? It is all about special cash advances. Tama po ba? MC 97-002.
Meron po, Mr. Chair.
Are you familiar with that?
Me personally, Mr. Chair, hindi po.
Oh, this is a Memorandum Circular 97 and this Joint Memorandum Circular 2015. And if you are not familiar with this, how can I ask question and how can you answer my questions with regards to your mandate and your responsibility with regards to this Memorandum Circular 97-002?
Mr. Chair, as far as the confidential funds audit is concerned, we base our audit mainly on the joint circular.
Oh, of course. That's why, may I ask you, that's why I'm asking you about the MC 97-002. Because the first question to be raised to you, if you are familiar with MC 97-002, is thus Joint Memorandum Circular 2015-01 conforms o concur with your MC 97-002. Kasi ito po, lahat po dito is all about special cash advances. Mr. Chairman, how can we proceed? How can I proceed if the representative from COA
Attorney Camora.
is not knowledgeable about MC 97-002? Because requirements stipulated in MC 97-002 or the GMC 2015-01 should conform with MC 97-002. And looking at the provisions of both MC and GMC, not all, but most of the provision of such MC and GMC is conforms with MC 97-002.
Yes, Mr. Chair, because MC 97-002 is used for regular audit.
Correct. Tama.
Yes,
Okay,
Mr.
now,
Chair.
kasi hindi pwedeng magmanggaan yun, di ba? Tama?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, now, let me proceed. You have a copy now with MC? 97-002?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Let me first ask, who appoints in this case, who appoints the SDO? In the case of the confidential fund of the Office of the Vice President, who is the appointing officer for the SDO?
As to the confidential funds, it was the President.
The President?
The OVP, the Vice President.
The Vice
Mr. Chair.
President. And the Vice President, as the appointing officer, signed all the documents related to this, the disbursements of such fund. Tama?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
And of course, the special disbursement officer also signed. Tama?
Some of the documents, Mr. Chair.
Sandali. During disbursement, some, but some.
Lahat ba?
Bakit some?
Meron bang hindi siya?
Kasi binigyan nga siya ng authority. She or he was appointed as the SDO by the appointing officer. And in this case, it's the Vice President.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Except
Tama.
for the liquidation transmittal letter, which is by the head of agency.
Sorry?
Except for the transmittal letter, which is signed by the head of agency, all the reports are signed by the SDO.
Correct. Except for the transmittal
Yes.
of the agency.
Yes,
Tama?
Mr.
But
Chair.
all liquidation reports and everything should be signed by the SDO.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Correct. And not only the SDO, not only, in this case, the Vice President, and that includes also the accountant.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Now, can you name the special disbursing officer, in this case, of the confidential fund?
It's Miss Gina Acosta.
Miss Gina Acosta. Okay. Specifically, what is the position of Miss Gina Acosta in the Office of the Vice President?
Asan yung designation niya? Mr. Chair, our documents here only identify her as the SDO.
So your document is only identify her as the SDO.
SDO.
Okay, now, Mr. Chairman, with this, Mr. Chairman, I move that we invite Ms. Gina Acosta in the next hearing, and at the same time, the Office of the Vice President should submit to this committee the official designation of Ms. Gina Acosta.
There's a motion to invite Gina Acosta from the Office of the Vice President. Is there any second to the
Mr.
motion?
Chair.
Duly seconded. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is carried.
Can I proceed, Mr. Chairman?
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, in all liquidation report, the SDO should sign, the Vice President, in this case, should sign, and the Chief Accountant should sign. Tama po ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And who is the Chief Accountant that signed this liquidation report?
It's Miss Julieta Villa del Rey.
Julieta
Villa del Rey.
Villa del Rey. Mr. Chairman, again, I move to invite Ms. Villeta del Rey, the Chief Accountant of the Office of the Vice President, in the next hearing. So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second, Mr. Chair.
There's a motion to invite Julieta del Rey in the next scheduled hearing. Duly seconded by the Honorable Flores. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is carried.
With the permission of the Chairman, may I proceed?
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, question of the SDO. In the joint memorandum circular, and with regards to MC-97-002, the special disbursing officer has to acquire a fidelity bond. Tama po ba?
Tama po, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Now, under MC 97-002, the SDO, no? Unless MC 97-002 was amended by the COA, the SDO or any accountable officer should submit her or his SALN to the Bureau of Treasury. Tama?
Tama po, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Now, do you have a specific document with regards to, in your possession, from the Bureau of Treasury with regards to the fidelity bond that was submitted by Ms. Gina Acosta, in particular, with regards to this confidential fund?
We have that document, Mr. Chair, but it is not with us right now.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move once again that the COA will submit to this honorable committee the fidelity bond that was submitted by the Office of the Vice President to the Bureau of Treasury and to the COA, Mr. Chairman. So move.
Second.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is carried.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. And in the case of this 125 million confidential fund, ano po ba in your practice, COA, and of course the Bureau of Treasury, if you cannot answer this, I will address this question to the Bureau of Treasury in the next hearing. Now, question, what is the ceiling of an SDO in this matter? This is a 125 million transaction or budget.
Mr. Chair, the BTR has a table which is dependent on the amount of the accountability.
So wala po kayo ngayon?
Yes, wala po ngayon, Mr.
Kasi
Chair.
dapat, di ba, nagsasalubong kayo ng BTR at saka COA?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We do use their table for our reference.
So you're using the table of the BTR with regards to accountability of the special disbursing officer or accountable officers?
Yes, Mr. Chair, because it is one of the requirements under the joint
Correct.
circular.
Mr. Chairman, again, I move that we invite the representative from the BTR, Bureau of Treasury, and the person that has knowledge with regards to this 125 million confidential fund, and bring or submit to this honorable committee the documents with regards to the accountability on this particular issue, Mr. Chairman, the 125 million confidential fund. The person in charge from the BTR, at the same time, the document that will indeed was submitted by the Office of the Vice President when the Vice President appoints a certain Gina Acosta. So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is carried.
Now, Mr. Chairman, I have still some questions. No, I will not go into detail because most of my question will be addressed to Ms. Gina Acosta, the Chief Accountant. Of course, I cannot ask the Vice President because he will not be answering the question of this honorable committee. But, Mr. Chairman, as of now, COA, please, in the next hearing, please bring with you all the MCs, no, memorandum circulars of the COA, so that this representation can ask you questions in relation to Joint Memorandum Circular 2015-01 and your MCs, no, not only Memorandum Circular 97-002. Kasi ito, di ba, regular audit to? Tama?
Yes po, Mr.
I'll bring
Chair.
with you the specific guidelines with regards to requirements, no, and processes being required for the conduct of special audit and the fraud audit. Because I want to see, Mr. Chairman, this particular issue, and COA should justify why this cannot be done in a special audit or a fraud audit. And so that, Mr. Chairman, we can also scrutinize the specific guidelines of the COA with regards to special audit and fraud audit in aid of legislation so that we in this committee, through the committee report, can propose possible amendments with regards to the guidelines of the COA on regular audit, special audit, and fraud audit, Mr. Chairman. Kasi gusto ko lang po makita if indeed COA made or taken due diligence with regards to this issue. Kasi napakalaki po to. And involved is the Office of the Vice President. No?
COA,
Yun
please.
po, Mr. Chairman. So, COA, please bring with you or submit to this committee your guidelines with regard to special audit and fraud audit.
COA, please take note of the manifestation of Congressman Paduano.
Noted, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lastly, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please
anyway,
proceed.
ano lang diretso lang
Last
to.
question.
You can answer this or you can review. Now, what's the difference? In jest, what's the difference between a regular audit, a special audit, and a fraud audit?
The regular audit is the regular financial audit, which we review all the transactions of the agency. A special audit or a fraud audit are requested for ano?
Mr. Chairman?
May I ask the...
Mr. Chairman, ako,
Call a friend.
with due respect to COA, dugtungan ko lang po.
Yes,
Kasi,
please. Congressman Paduano.
sinasabi mo kasi regular audit, yun yung annual audit, di ba? Tama?
Tama po,
Oo.
Mr. Chair.
Kasi, kaya nga regular siya because that is part of your mandate in any agencies, no? To conduct a regular audit every end of the year. Tama?
Yes po.
Okay. Now, kahit nga sa regular audit nyo, sometimes it happens and the next quarter na. The following year, di ba? Tama?
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
And Mr. Chairman, again, ayun po yung mga issue dito na this honorable committee should put in the possible committee report. No? Kailangan kasi dito, Mr. Chairman, may certain accountability with regards to audit. And dapat may corresponding penalty. Kasi tingnan mo, Mr. Chairman, well, in fact, in my own experience, no, for the past year, fraud audit, it takes COA for 1 year. Fraud audit pa yun. Kung fraud audit nga nangyayari yung 1 year, siguro naman pati yung regular audit. Kasi yung fraud audit and special audit, may exigency po yun. No, pero anyway, who can answer the difference between a special audit and a fraud audit and a regular audit? May sasagot ba o next hearing na lang?
Mr. Chair, with regard to the...
Attorney Lapitan.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Are you going to answer or you will ask the committee to just answer it in the next scheduled hearing para medyo mas kabisado ninyo?
I will answer.
You will answer now?
Yes.
Okay,
Briefly.
Briefly, okay. Please
Mr. Chair.
continue, Attorney Lapitan.
When we speak of a special audit, it comes in every form like fraud audit when there is when the transaction is covered or tainted with fraud. And we also have special audit like the levy audit, rate audit, which is being performed by other offices in the Commission. When it comes to a regular audit, that's the audit of the financial transaction where the 3 audit streams are being practiced. Mr. Chair.
Ito kasi sunod ko ng tanong, timeline.
With regard to the timeline, Mr. Chair, like the fraud audit, the COA issued several guidelines or internal policies. We have memorandum COA Memorandum 2020-014, if I'm not mistaken. That governs the rules on fraud audit, and also there are issuances by other office in the commission in the performance of rate audit, levy audit, and other special audit, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman,
Maybe, Mr. Chair, next hearing we will provide the full details.
Okay.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you. Last question.
Sige. Anyway, Mr. Chairman, pagbibigyan ko po yung COA kasi kaya nga po, kasi yung issue kasi dito is all about the difference between a regular audit. Kasi pag regular, nandun na yun, 6 months, then another 2 months from the, di ba, for the commission to decide, di ba? Now, question of fraud audit, kaya nga fraud audit yun, kaya nga special audit yun kasi there's an exigency. Kasi magkaiba yun, di ba? Tama? Now, as of now, you cannot answer about the timeline. Kasi hinabol po natin dito is all about the timeline. Kasi all the more, justice delayed, justice denied. Pag tinanong kita, i-review nyo na lang. Pagandaan nyo next hearing. Itong case, OBP case, 125 million confidential fund. Does it merit a special or a fraud audit?
Actually,
Attorney
sir,
Camora.
it is, Mr. Chair, actually it is a compliance audit, so they have to comply with the joint circular.
Hindi nga, regular audit siya. Pero,
Compliance audit.
hindi, hypothetical lang. Until now nga, yung appeal hindi pa sinagot, but of course, they're given 180 days.
Yes.
Now, hypothetical lang. Is this particular case, pwede ba pumasok doon sa special audit? To conduct a special audit?
If there is a request.
If there is a what?
Request for
Who will request? Kaya, who will request?
anyone,
Sorry?
any person, agency, or
Any person, any agency? Madam, you check na lang po yung guidelines nyo with regards to fraud and special audit. Kasi baka mamaya, magka-problema po kayo.
sige.
Please
Thank you.
na po.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman,
Chair.
next hearing na lang po. I will just end my interpellation to COA and I hope that next hearing, COA will prepare with regards to it and the BTR, Mr. Chairman. Because in this particular case, it is crucial role ng BTR at saka ng COA, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you po. We will now recognize the Honorable Vice Chairman J. Cong.
Just a statement, Mr. Chair. The purpose of this inquiry is not to attack anyone, but to shed light on matters that affect our nation's governance. Refusing to testify under oath sends a signal that there is something to avoid. If there is nothing to conceal, why not take the oath? It is the basic act of accountability that all public officials must be willing to undertake. When a public official refuses to take an oath, it opens the questions about the truthfulness of their statement. Taking the oath is not just a legal formality, it is a commitment to honesty. Any refusal to do so undermines trust in public statements. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Tapos na? Wala na? Thank you. Honorable J. Cong. Yes, Honorable Lara.
Chair, just a manifestation also with regards to COA. Relative dun sa binanggit ni Chairman Paduano, considering na lahat ng mga investigation natin when it comes to public funds, ang number one na kailangan natin is the COA. No? Kasi alam naman natin ang role ng COA dito. So, ang ano ko lang, sa lahat, nabanggit niya yung Mamba case and others. Palagi ang germane na issue here is the duration from which na-finalize nyo yung report ninyo. So, eto from your end, no, Mr. Chair, sana parating ito kay Chairman ng COA once and for all, no, na yung you try to review yung mga policies na finormulate ninyo. No, kasi ito sa mga pagdinig namin, no, ang the whole COA process from the time na magkaroon ng audit to AOM to notice of disallowance to the filing of proper cases. Palagi niyong tandaan na Mr. Chair, on the part of COA, yung dokumento talaga na manggagaling sa kanila is a very, very crucial. If not, yun yung talagang magdidiin kung meron talagang paglabag sa lahat na ito. Katulad ng issues natin ngayon, no? Dito sa pinag-uusapan natin ngayon. So, ito po, with due respect sa COA, no? Yung mga you should also take in consideration all the processes, notwithstanding the dilatory tactics that causes the delay. No, kasi katulad nito, 180 days, bibigyan nyo from which to appeal. Baka meron ulit ito, isasubmit ulit, no, na nag-i-issue ng o mag-sisik ng another extension of time na pinagbibigyan ninyo. So, ito, just to manifest, Mr. Chair, if it would be formulated and legislated, itong mga ganitong mga bagay in terms of duration, kasi alam naman natin ang purpose, number one purpose ng lahat ng pagdinig natin dito sa Kongreso is in aid of legislation, no? Para hindi na maulit ito, kung pwede, mapaiksian natin, no, itong mga duration, in terms of duration, no, should be reviewed. Halos lahat ng cases involving government funds, kailangan ang final COA report for filing appropriate charges. And with due respect sa COA, Mr. Chair, tingin tuloy ng ating mga kababayan na kayo ang cause of delay ng pagpa-file ng mga proper charge. If not, no, in some cases, in cahoots tuloy ang tingin na nila sa inyo, which is not also fair, no, sa COA. No, pwede nating gawin, total, ang tagal nyo naman na ginagawa itong prosesong ito, Mr. Chair, ng COA. From your end, sana, kayo na mag-propose sa amin, no, kung paano natin mapabilis ang mga proseso natin. Kasi katulad nung binabanggit ni Chairman Paduano kanina, it's only a policy formulated din coming from the COA, Mr. Chair. So, ito, ang appeal ko lang, Mr. Chair, para lahat ito, para hindi nila ma-misinterpret na katulad nito, trabaho lang ginagawa natin, tapos baka iba ang ini-insinuate ng iba na nagpopolitika tayo dito. Ang ano ko lang, kung ma-shorten lahat ito, or magawa ng policy talaga when it comes to COA, no, na mapabilis lahat itong mga proseso natin. So, yun lang, Mr. Chair, just to manifest.
Thank you. The next to interpolate is the Honorable Paul Ortega.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair. Short manifestation lang po. Marami pa rin po tayong tanong. Parang back to the future po yung nangyari sa atin, Mr. Chair. Doon po sa budget briefings nga before. But still, we will pursue our question, sir. Pero since hindi nga po nag-oath si ating Vice President and she left early, hindi rin po siya, malamang hindi rin po siya sasagot ng mga tanong, Mr. Chair. And ipe-pursue pa rin natin yung mga katanungan natin, Mr. Chair. That's why I will ask nga po for the support of this committee. Magsasubmit po ako ng mga tanong na nais ko pong tanungin sa Office of the Vice President, saka yung mga iba't ibang ahensya po na nandito. At isasubmit ko po sa komite at aabangan po natin kung anong written na answers po ang ibibigay nila sa ating komite. Kasi may mga tanong po na galing naman po sa aming respectable districts. Hindi naman po namin alam kung paano namin sasagutin ng direkta yung mga taga-lugar namin. Marahil po, pati yung mga ibang nagtanong po dito, may mga tanong din po pag umuwi sila sa kanilang districts on how the confidential funds and how the other funds were used at kung bakit po iniiwasan yung mga tanong at kalahati po ng statement nga po kanina is puro naman po sa pamumulitika at sa susunod po na eleksyon. Total, Yung mga tanong naman po is previous years at hanggang sa 2024, Mr. Chair. So I will submit to this honorable committee yung mga tanong po na gusto po nating masagot ng Office of the Vice President, ng COA at saka ng DBM, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you. The next to interpolate, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Ramon Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Mr. Chair, most of yung katanungan po natin, we were hoping to direct to the OVP. And we were expecting that this is no longer a budget hearing. At the very least, yung mga USEC and ASEC that were requested to be here would be around. But given na wala po sila at wala rin po tayong maitanong sa OVP, siguro initial questions lang po sa COA. But I will be reserving most of my questions for probably the next hearing kapag nandito na po yung appropriate representatives.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, may tanong lang po una ako sa 500 million na confidential funds ng OVP for fiscal year 2023 po, no? Noong 2022, nag-request po ng OVP ng 500 million para sa confidential funds for GAA 2023. Is this correct po? May we ask any representative of the COA? Of the DBM pala po, mas appropriate siguro.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mr. Chair.
Yusek Toledo.
Yeah,
Mr.
Chair. For 2023, there was a request for confidential fund for 500 million pesos, Mr. Chair.
And the 500 million that was requested by the OVP was approved by the DBM and was consequently also approved by the House and the Senate. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It was approved by the Congress, yes.
Mr. Chair, would the good USEC be aware po kung ano po yung justification that was propounded by the OVP to the DBM for the request of 500 million?
DBM, please continue. Kong Rog, kanino po ninyo ina-address yung question?
Sa DBM rin po.
Yes. Yusek
I
Toledo,
believe po,
please,
Mr. Chair, the justification of any budget proposed for the President's budget, yung NEP po, ay dumadaan sa DBM. So I think they would have the, they would be in the proper position to answer this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Basically, the proposed contingent, rather confidential fund for 2020 is the same as they used for 2022 that was approved through the release of the contingent fund, which is basically for the good governance engagement and social services projects of the Office of the Vice President, which I related earlier as far as where to use that. Basically for the safe implementation of various projects activities of the Office of the Vice President across its satellite offices. Okay, so also the conduct of its official engagements and functional representation in the international and local events. Also the implementation of various projects and activities relevant to national security and peace and order, and implementation of the same with proper security and safety protocols for the benefit of the institution, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would agree that those would be activities precisely within the purview of the use of confidential funds. And I believe that if that was the justification given to the DBM, it would be understandable po na ito po yung talagang i-approve nila. However, Mr. Chair, in hindsight, in retrospect, which is 2020, there were actually signs already na there was confusion as to the proper use of these funds. If I recall, there's an article actually in which a certain attorney Munsayak in 2022 mentioned in justifying the program of the OVP. And actually, this is something that I was supposed to ask the OVP. Pero dahil wala po sila, I will just relay what I have read. And hopefully, they can just confirm it at a later time. Ang sabi po nila, sa ilalim ng good governance program ng OVP, kasama po dapat sa confidential funds usage yung libreng sakay, pagbabag o campaign, OVP food trucks, livelihood programs like Magnegosyo Taday, which should be noted is the precise program that is suffering from 0.4% utilization rate, no? And medical assistance and burial assistance. Mr. Chair, I would like to ask the DBM, had they known, if kung ito po yung magiging justification for CIF request for 500 million, would in his opinion, would this have been allowed by the Secretary of the DBM? Was this within the purview of the use of confidential funds, Mr. Chair?
Yusek Toledo, please answer.
Mr. Chair, I think some of those programs or projects that were mentioned should all be good to be implemented by the other different implementing agencies. So I will leave that to my answer that the confidential fund should always be related to what has been for the good governance project, engagement and social services project of the Office of the Vice President.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and I agree with that. But on its face po, no, yung binanggit ni Attorney Monsayak, would this be considered yung security requirements for the implementation? Kasi po, very general lamang po ang sinabi niya eh. It just mentioned the programs itself, and I don't know if my security component po yung, for example, libreng sakay. I don't know kung may security component yung magnegosyo taday. Definitely, maybe not with the Pagbabago campaign. Medical assistance, burial assistance.
Mr. Chair, as a matter of fact, we have some sort of exclusive use for the confidential fund. Basically, if I may enumerate it, Mr. Chair, one is purchase of information necessary for formulation and implementation of programs relevant to national security, peace, and order, rental of transportation vehicles and maintenance of safe houses used for confidential activities, purchase of rental supplies, equipment, among others, for confidential operations, payment of rewards to informers, subject, of course, to guidelines, and then uncover or prevent illegal activities that may pose danger to the agency or its personnel or property, and I guess others that may be authorized by the, of course, the General Appropriations Act and special laws.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think, of course, I can't speak for the committee, but we can consider na parang outside of the purview of the enumerated instances, yung ginawang justification po nitong Attorney Monsayak. But this is something, I guess, that we'll pursue at a later time. Mr. Chair, may I ask po, in relation to the Good Governance Program, and I think I could ask this to the COA, if it will be okay. Is there a requirement for a physical and financial plan when it comes to the Good Governance Program? Is this a requirement when disbursing?
Who will answer po sa COA?
Mr. Chair, good morning.
Please identify yourself.
I'm Fahadin, or the audit team leader of the OBP.
Okay, please continue.
Yes, yes, Mr. Chair. For the question relative to the work and financial plan, I think I do not have the knowledge if it is required, but then based on our regulation, it is not part of the regulatory or documentary requirements for the disbursement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, move to the next question. The rest of this requires answers from the OVP, but I will reserve that for the next session po siguro, next hearing. Mr. Chair, in relation to the procurement for OVP satellites not fully compliant with the procurement law, pagkupo po ni VP Duterte noong July 2022,
August
it was
Gutierrez,
reported...
you still have 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. It was reported that satellite offices would be part of the thrust of the OVP. And at that time, there were still no office spaces. Was the DBM, I would like to direct this to DBM, Mr. Chair. Was the DBM made aware of the OVP's intention to set up satellite offices? I understand sa line item, wala pong specific dun, no? Sa OVP. Perhaps this was by object of expenses. Basically, yung tanong ko po is, aware po ba yung DBM of the intention of the OVP to set up satellite offices?
DBM?
Mr. Chair, that's part of the request when they requested for the confidential fund.
Confidential
contingent
fund?
Yeah, contingent.
Contingent fund po yung ginamit.
Yeah,
So this
Mr.
is
Chair.
this question is not about the CIF.
Yeah.
So out of the contingent fund, dun lumabas. So it was not part of any line item. Mr. Chair, in the history of the DBM po, and I know I've asked this during the budget deliberation, but I'd like to reiterate. Has this been an occurrence for previous administrations? Has any other vice president requested the establishment of satellite offices? And if they did they source it from the contingent fund?
Mr. Chair, we'll just check our record in a minute, but I can't recall if there's was such a request then in the previous administration.
Of course. And I think this was answered previously kasi wala naman po talaga. But we'd like to get a final determination by the DBM, a final confirmation na wala po talaga. Now, based on the 2022 OVP Annual Audit Report, there was a finding that hindi po dumaan sa maayos na procurement or bidding yung property, plant, and equipment and semi-expendable properties for the satellite offices. Would the COA be able to expound on this annual finding in the annual audit report, Mr. Chair?
COA.
Mr. Chair, Marvin Joshua J. Politic po. Yes, Mr. Chair, we confirm that in the 2022 RR, we noted that some of the semi-expendable and PPE were procured through reimbursement and not fully compliant with the RA 9184.
Mr. Chair, this is interesting. What is the proper mode po? We don't do reimbursement. Dapat may specific item po ito and we would do competitive bidding po ba? Or is there a specific mode that is allowable under the COA regulations?
For purchase of equipment and PPE, there are alternative modes of procurement under the 9184. For example, small value procurement, emergency purchase if the need and if there is emergency identified for the purchase.
And in your finding po through the Honorable Chair, was there any justification for this and none of those three would include by reimbursement po no, sa kanilang officers. So was there any justification for this mode of acquisition, Mr. Chair? Mode of procurement, I mean?
So the management stated that due to the time constraints imposed by the RA 9184, the procurement unit was unable to process the requests at that time of the opening of the satellite offices. So the property unit, on the other hand, does not have the necessary office equipment at the time of the opening. It was agreed during the discussion meeting with their office that reimbursement would be the best option to address the immediate need.
Mr. Chair, is that a valid, yung sabi po ng management, is that a valid excuse sa kanilang opinion po? Would this count as irregular? Ano po yung basis natin sa COA for having findings? You have an acronym po, no? Irregular, excessive. Can you run us down through that, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, these are not compliant with the 9184 or can be considered as irregular.
So irregular po siya. But sorry, to enlighten us lang po, ano po yung basis po natin? I remember it was mentioned during the budget hearing. I forgot lang yung shortcut ninyo. You have irregular, unconscionable. Can you give us, I think it was 5?
Yes, Mr. Chair, can I answer?
Yes, through the Honorable Chair, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have illegal expenditure, irregular, unnecessary, extravagant, unconscionable, and excessive.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in this case, mukhang irregular, highly irregular po yung procurement process.
Last 2 minutes.
Okay lang, Mr. Chair. I will not take up any more time. The rest of it naman po would be properly answered by the OVP. So in that case, Mr. Chair, I will yield to the other interpellators. Maraming salamat po, COA and DBM. Thank you, Mr.